Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulihil Kareem. Wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man istanna bi sunnatihi ila yawmiddin. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. This is session 24 of our series in the names of Allah. And in this session, we'll be looking at names 33, 34, and 35. And they are Al-Hakam, Al-Hakim, and Al-Hakeem, basically meaning the all-wise, the most wise. And as is our policy, we establish its presence in the Quran. We can find Al-Hakam, the divine name, mentioned only once in the Quran. And that is in Surah Al-An'am, verse 114. أَفَغَيْرَ اللَّهِ أَبْتَغِي حَكَمًا? Should I choose other than Allah as my judge? The name Al-Hakim is mentioned 5 times, all of those times in the plural form. For example, in Surah At-Tin, verse 8, أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ. Say, isn't Allah, or is Allah not the best of judges? The divine name Al-Hakim, this is the one which we find most frequently in the Quran. It's mentioned a total of 94 times, of which 33 times it has the definite article. For example, in Surah Al-An'am, verse 18, هُوَ الْقَاهِرُ فَوْقَ عِبَادِهِ وَهُوَ الْحَكِيمُ الْخَبِيرُ. He is the irresistible above his servants, and he is the wise, the all-knowing. The all-wise and all-knowing. We looked at this before. We used this verse when we were looking at Al-Qahir. The meaning, linguistically, Al-Hakam, Al-Hakim, and Al-Hakim all come from the triliteral root Ha, Kaf, Mim. Hakam, Hakamun, or Hakama, which basically means to judge. Hakim is the intensive form of Hakim on the pattern of Fa'il, which we're familiar with, and it means judge. It also appears in the Quran 210 times in 13 derived forms. And that's mentioned just to show the level of usage of the term or the derived meanings from judging, judgment, judge, judging on, mahkum, etc. It is said to have 4 possible meanings. The first is to be wise. This is the obvious one that we all are familiar with, most wise. That is to possess wisdom. And the second, to judge. The third is to perfect something. This is Arabic usage now, to build it firmly. And the fourth is to prevent. And you might wonder, why prevent? As the scholars explained, is the judge prevents 2 opponents from harming each other. So his judgment between them protects them or prevents them from harming one or the other. Relative to Allah, this divine name, Al-Hakim, and its other forms, means the most wise. Consequently, this attribute of Allah indicates that He legislates rules to prevent humankind and the jinn from wrongdoing, and all His rules are for their benefit. Al-Hakim acts in the most accurate and perfect way as He calculates, measures, and designs everything to fit His master plan perfectly. A point to note that in many locations in the Quran, Allah has linked ilm, knowledge, with hikmah, or wisdom, together by repeatedly mentioning the divine names Al-Alim and Al-Hakim together. He did this in order to emphasize their inseparability with respect to Himself. However, they may exist separately in human beings and the jinn. In the case of Allah, of course, Him being all-wise, that wisdom is related to the knowledge. True wisdom is coming from knowledge. So it is unthinkable that Allah would act wisely but ignorantly, or act knowledgeably but not wisely. These are just two inseparable concepts. They are built into the names. But in the case of human beings, they can exist separately. Also amongst the jinn. When that occurs, they become counterproductive qualities and characteristics working against each other. For what benefit is knowledge if one does not use it wisely? And what use is wisdom if one has no knowledge? Can we build a proper bridge or an airplane based on wisdom? Michelangelo, an Italian sculptor, painter, architect, inventor, and poet of the High Renaissance, he died in the 16th century, was very wise. In fact, he was a genius who designed a number of flying machines, none of which worked. Those who tested them in his time killed themselves. Nevertheless, he was very wise, and his designs looked very logical and reasonable, which is why people decided to try them out. But the two need to be there. There has to be proper knowledge gained through the proper channels, not just knowledge based on supposition, like the supposition that if you dropped two objects, in Greece, they have this belief, if you drop two objects, two balls, for example, one a big, cannonball, the other one a little ball bearing, right? You drop the two of them, the heavier one, the cannonball, should hit the ground before the lighter one. That was reasoned by Greek scholars and concluded without experimentation. They felt it was not necessary. In fact, to go and experiment is like a lower level. If you're able to arrive at it with your intellect, your understanding, your mind, then that is the higher level. Well, eventually, much later in Italy, one of the scientists of centuries after the time of the Greeks tested it. He went up to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa and dropped the two balls, and they observed down there, they hit at the same time. That's knowledge. That knowledge, which was based on, okay, one ball looked bigger and it felt heavier, so it should hit the ground before the other. That wasn't knowledge. That wasn't really knowledge. It wasn't wisdom either, because wisdom would have led those scientists to check it out. It was only a supposition. So that's human nature and human society, that we may act based on fake knowledge and think that we're acting wisely. And we can also act based on wisdom without real knowledge. So Allah combined these two to emphasize that obviously this is not a good approach, not the proper way to approach judgment. It should be based on knowledge and also based on wisdom. So in this combination, Allah affirms for his creatures that his might, Allah in the Quran also links the quality of being the most wise with the most powerful, the mighty, Al-Aziz. We find this combination also repeated a number of times. In this combination, Allah affirms for his creatures that his might is tempered by his wisdom. Even though in the case of Allah, this fact is automatically understood, as Allah is the completely good, At-Tayyib, and thus his might would only be used for good. And good ensures justice and fairness, as demanded by wisdom from all aspects. But Allah combined the two anyway. He combined them to emphasize, yes, he is mighty. And it's really when he's dealing with situations where he wants to emphasize his might, that he adds the wisdom, Al-Hakim, along with it, to let them know, to let human beings know that yes, he is mighty and controls everything and can do anything. However, he only does what he does based on wisdom, justice, fairness, etc. He emphasizes so many places in the Quran. وَلَا يَظْلِمُ رَبُّكَ أَحَدًا. Your Lord will not oppress anyone. He will not be unfair to anyone. لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. Allah does not burden any soul beyond its capacity. That's unfair. To burden a soul beyond its capacity would be unfair. To expect them to perform as others perform, definitely unfair. So these combinations and others show us that Allah uses both his absolute knowledge and absolute power in the wisest of ways, in order to guide us through this life while testing us with tailor-made trials, challenges, and opportunities for us to grow our faith in Al-Hakim and earn the ultimate reward of Jannah at the end of this world. Having looked at the meaning of these names, we're now transitioning into the application. Some of that is implied from what we have already discussed. But Ibn Battal identified clear principles by which to apply these systematically. Apply the names of Allah in a systematic way so that we fulfill Allah's instruction to worship him through and with his names. The first principle is to adopt where applicable. On one hand, as Allah judges his creatures justly, that we just spoke about, the justice in Allah's judgment, because he is at-tayyib, he is the just and good God, power over all things is in his hands. So as he judges justly, we as human beings are all judges in one way or another. We say, okay, don't be judgmental, but it's our nature to judge. We all judge from the time we get up in the morning to the time we go to bed at night. The only time we're not judging is in our sleep. Well, we might even be dreaming about judging, but as a norm, it's in our waking hours, we're making judgments all the time, value judgments. Judgments for other people, judgments for ourselves. Decisions, we're calling them decisions, but decisions are judgment. To decide on something, you have to judge something to be this way and something else to be that way, and then you make that decision. So it's based on judgments. So we apply this name of Allah in all its forms, Hakam, Hakim, and Al-Hakim. We apply it by being as we can just in our judgments, as Allah is just with us. Right? We cannot apply it as He does, which is free from error and everything else. But we are required to make judgments and to make them properly, because we are responsible. As the Prophet ﷺ told us, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. Each and every one of us is a shepherd. We're all shepherds. And all of us are responsible for our flocks. Allah has put us over some group, someone. Just as the shepherd is responsible for the sheep that he looks after, similarly, each and every one of us has a similar responsibility. So in this way, recognizing this responsibility and judging accordingly, then these divine names are applied on their limited human scale. We do so by judging fairly and justly in the spheres of our influence and dominance. So when we judge justly, we worship Allah through this divine name. When we judge justly, we are rewarded, even if we make mistakes, as the Prophet ﷺ told us. That was to remove the fear of judging. But of course, judging without knowledge, that's a whole nother story. If we judge with the knowledge we have and we make a mistake, we gain one reward. This is the promise of the Prophet ﷺ. And if we are correct, we get double. But those with knowledge should make those judgments. If we don't have the knowledge, what do? A judgment needs to be made. Allah said, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask those who know if you don't know. That's what your duty becomes then. Once you have no knowledge, you don't have access to knowledge, then your duty is not to make a judgment, but to go and find out from others who have more knowledge than you, who would then help you in making your judgment. So you would still be making a judgment, but you would be depending on others directly. And indirectly, everybody is depending on somebody. Nobody is an island unto himself. or herself. Allah is as-Samad. He's the one to whom all things rise, all things seek knowledge, sustenance, everything. He is the only one who doesn't require anyone outside of himself to be able to make decisions. Another way by which we can worship Allah through this name and these names and its derivatives is to trust in Allah. So on the other hand, we can apply the divine names by wholeheartedly accepting Allah's judgments in our lives. Not grudgingly. Allah makes a decision, we accept it wholeheartedly. And Allah talks about that in the Quran also, about the distinction between the real believers. Real believers, they accept Allah's decision without finding in their hearts haraj, in any kind of doubt and uncertainty, etc. So we should accept Allah's decisions as being what is best, that there is wisdom behind them. Because when we accept grudgingly, because we may have no choice. We have to, what to do? What else can I do? This is what's been put on me. So I don't think it really should be put on me. Basically, that's what you're saying when you're doing it grudgingly. Because that's a product of doubt in Allah's decision. And in fact, it borders on disbelief. So if Allah Al-Hakim decides that you should lose something which you greatly desired, there is wisdom behind it. Don't ask why. Instead, you should say, why not? If Allah knows best and that's what He decides, then that's what's best. Why not? Not why. So we should be like the owner of the boat in Surah Al-Kahf, which we're encouraged to read every Friday. The owner of the boat, which Al-Khadir damaged. We're all familiar with the story. It meant for him at the time great loss of revenue. He couldn't go across the river anymore and carry people because he had to get the boat fixed. So he lost all those travelers who would have gone on his boat backwards and forwards. Also, it was going to cost him to fix the boat. It would have cost dearly. He had to get some repairmen to go and do what is necessary, lift the boat up and fix that hole properly so it doesn't go out and end up drowning. So it was all a costly affair, So naturally, it would have hurt from that perspective. And it hurting, that doesn't reflect on our belief. It's natural. When you lose things, when things are broken, things that are dear to you, etc., to feel a sense of hurt is normal. It's normal. Allah puts that feeling into us to look after those around us. If we didn't have that feeling, it didn't matter to us, this one got hurt, but what would happen to our children? That instinct helps us to look after our children. But as it turned out, you all know that a king came down the river shortly thereafter and snatched the boats of everybody, all the good boats. When it came to the boat of the man, the boat which Al-Khidr or Khadir rode in, which had the hole in it, no need for a broken boat. He went on, took the other boats. So what happened for the owner of the boat? When he got his boat fixed, all of the passengers were coming to him because the others were still had to go out and go and find and build new boats, etc., etc. So it was a huge benefit for him. Subhanallah. What appeared to be harm in Allah's wisdom was benefit. So if something happens that displeases us, we shouldn't be unhappy about it. Unhappy meaning unhappy with God, Al-Hakim. It's natural for us, as I said, to suffer from the loss, to feel bad, but don't feel bad about Allah. That's the mistake. You know, if you haven't understood Allah, then that can happen to you. Like I remember there was a time when they had some hoof and mouth disease or some disease in the UK where they had to slaughter, a number of calves. They had to just slaughter them to prevent the spread of this disease amongst the cattle that was being raised and milked and eaten, etc., in the UK and other parts also. But this story I saw in the newspaper because they had a photograph, and in the photograph there was a mother with her daughter. The daughter was holding up a sign. The sign said, "God, why did you kill my calf?" She was questioning God. Why did God cause the calf to have to die? Okay, she's a child, but it represents a lack of understanding of the ways of God, of Allah. And that kind of incident, for some people, that can lead them to kufr, to complete disbelief in God. So it is important for us that, as I said, we don't be unhappy with God if what displeases us happens. We can be unhappy because nobody likes to lose, but not unhappy with Allah. That's the very dangerous position to be in. And that's important for us to teach our children so that they grow up with that sense of understanding that Allah knows best. قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. Whatever Allah wishes, He destines, and you just have to accept it. Accept it wholeheartedly, believing that it is what is best. Similarly, you lost your money, or you lost somebody from your family, or you didn't get what you wanted. Anytime this happens, as many times, remember those times in our lives when there were things which happened, we thought they were bad and they turned out to be good, because we all experience the Khadr incident. We all experience the Khadr incident of the boat. All of us, at some time in our lives, we have experienced this. Many times it happens. Something happens, we thought it was terrible, we were so sad, and then next thing you know, we say, So even in the West, they say every cloud, that's a dark cloud, where it looks like rain is coming, lightning, all this bad stuff is coming. It's not nice. It has a silver lining. That's what I said. Every cloud has a silver lining, meaning that there's some good that is going to come out of this thing. Now, as terrible as it might seem, there's some good that's going to come out of it because we see it practically in all of our lives. So we have to apply this attribute of wisdom, Al-Hakim, Al-Hakim, Al-Hakam, these names, we have to implement them by trusting in the wisdom of Al-Hakim. No matter how hard it might seem and how many times we are faced with it, we have to trust in Allah's judgment. As Allah said in Surah Al-Mumtahina, verse 10, ذَلِكُمْ حُكْمُ اللَّهِ يَحْكُمُ بَيْنَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. That is the judgment of Allah between you both. And Allah is the most knowledgeable, the most wise. The other way by which we can apply the name Al-Hakim from another perspective is that we obey the instructions that He's given us. We obey His rules, His laws. So all the rules of Allah, Al-Hakim, which we call the Sharia, are set to reform and improve human society and not to cause hardship. Non-Muslims all complain all the time that, you guys, everything is haram, 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 haram. There's just so much haram. How can you enjoy your life? You must be living this very dull, Well, the reality is that the haram in life is like that one tree in the garden. That's the similitude. The haram things, what we are not allowed to do, is like the one tree in the garden. Now, Adam and Eve, they had the whole garden of fruit trees, to eat from. But only one tree was forbidden. What that one tree is, we don't get into it. But just one tree was forbidden. And we believe that Allah forbade it because there was harm in that tree. Because Allah doesn't do things arbitrarily. Just to make life difficult, you can't eat this one. No, this is not the way. We see in all of the haram things that there is harm in them. They're very clear. 90% of them you could say, this doesn't require much thinking, etc., to know this is haram. It's harmful. It's harmful. It's clear, obvious. There are some which you say, oh, well, really, what's the harm in this one? Or what's the harm in that one? There are a few like that, say 10%. But we believe, based on the 90%, where they're all harmful, that Allah has forbidden even that 10% because there's harm that we can't see. We can't grasp. We're not able to deduce. Now. That's the reality. Maybe 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we'll find in it harm. A'udhu billah, we say, oh, alhamdulillah, we were protected from it from the beginning. So, this is how we should look at the haram and the halal. Allah lists the haram things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The halal, He says, whatever is not haram in that list, all of it is halal. Good for you. So there's no way to list the halal. It's just too much. It's uncountable. The The haram has been specifically counted. So Islam is not all haram. No, no, not at all. Now, some people might treat it that way. Some people might, live their lives, under that umbrella, that dark cloud. Everything is haram. But that's not Islam, really. The Prophet ﷺ lived a very open life. But where the haram came, it's clear, it's known, as the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-haramu bayyin. Al-halalu bayyin. What is halal is clear. It's everything that isn't haram. Those few things. What's haram is clear. It's only those few things, not all the halal. So we worship Allah as the most wise by obeying His instructions. Leave the haram. Stick with the abundance of halal. So Allah stresses in the Quran with regards to the Sharia. يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر. Allah wishes ease for you and not difficulty. Ease, not difficulty. That's what Allah wants. So Islam is not difficult. It's easy when you know the rules. When you don't know the rules, and this happens to people, especially new Muslims or ignorant Muslims, etc., you don't know what the rules are, then it seems like, oh man, this is so difficult. You're like walking a tightrope. You could just fall off any time into the fire. No, it's not. The path of Islam is broad. It's a straight path, but it's broad. It has a lot of room in it. Our prayers, some people, they take the prayer as a burden, right? You must do it exactly at the beginning of its time. As soon as the adhan goes, right away, pray. Pray immediately. Although the masjids don't follow that principle. They give time for people to make it to the masjid, to make wudu and everything else. But some people, found this amongst some who in their homes, because they don't go to the masjid, for example, they don't have a masjid, and or they're women not going to the masjid, they're praying at home anyway. But they become so rigid about praying exactly at the beginning of the time. And of course, Prophet ﷺ had said, it's true, that the best prayer, compulsory prayers, the best prayer are those that are done at the beginning of the time. That is the best, so that you don't forget. But at the same time, there is still leeway there. There's still leeway. It's not a hard and fast, rigid. So now people who don't pray at the beginning, you look at them as, this is not a sincere Muslim. They're praying in the middle of the time or towards the end of the time. But why did we get the whole range? Allah, through His messenger, gave us a full range. 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. He gave us the full range. So it means that your prayer is acceptable at any point there. And the quality of your prayer is going to depend or determine what is the reward that you get from it. Not necessarily the time at the beginning or at the end, but the quality of the prayer that you made at the beginning or the end. So the rules which Allah as Al-Hakim and Al-Hakeem made for humankind are what is best, what benefits human and jinn society. Al-Hakim made you and knows exactly what you need to succeed in this life. That's the bottom line. If we don't understand some of his rulings, we shouldn't blame the rules, but instead blame our limited understanding. That's what we are supposed to do. If we follow that principle, we can handle the rules that Allah has given with a good heart. We blame ourselves. It's we who don't understand. We need to find out. We need to understand. Until then, we accept Allah's decision as what is best. So we need to remove any doubt regarding Allah's wisdom and know that with certainty, the right to give rulings only belongs to Al-Hakim. This is ultimate rulings. In al-hukm illa lillah. In al-hukm illa lillah. This is what Allah stated. Making rules, setting these rules, which are permanent rules for human beings, as long as we're on the face of this earth, that's with Allah. That belongs to Allah. And instead, we should ask Allah to make us of those who value His laws above man-made laws in all aspects of our lives. Another way to apply Al-Hakim and the other derivatives, the most wise, is that we also have wisdom in our dealings. We try to apply whatever we're doing wisely. We need to find out what it takes to do whatever we have to do properly so that we can do so with a sense of wisdom. We apply this principle by following those who have wisdom. You can see that they have. Seeking understanding to build wisdom for ourselves so that even in our own applying of the rules, etc., we do so with wisdom. On one occasion, a man was wounded. He had some cut in his head, etc. It was very bad. And the companions that were with him, they were in a battle or coming back from a battle, something like this. And he had a wet dream. And it was very cold. He had lost a lot of blood and everything. The companions that were with him, they said, "You must make ghusl." He was thinking, can I get out of this? It's just so cold and bleeding, weak. He said, no way, you got to make ghusl. You must take that bath. And no way to heat up the water, so it means a cold bath on a freezing night. Next morning, the man was dead. So when they went to the Prophet ﷺ, they told him about what happened. He said, you killed him. You all killed him. There was tayammum. He could have made tayammum. He's in a circumstance which allowed him to use the substitute, where we use clean earth, we wipe our hands, wipe our face, and that takes the place of ghusl or wudu. That was there. But they didn't have the knowledge or the wisdom. They knew about the tayammum, but they thought that tayammum is only for ghusl, for wudu, when you have to make ablution. So, okay, because it's like ablution, you wash your hands, wiping your face, dust, right? But they needed to find out. They needed to find out, to get the benefit of the doubt. They could see real danger there. So excuse him till we can find out proper information. So we need to use wisdom in our own dealings with ourselves, our families, our societies, etc. Now, the second principle of Ibn Battal, to confirm where the name is unique and inapplicable, where it's a quality which belongs only to Allah, we cannot apply it to ourselves in any way, then we need to recognize it and reject any aspect of creation sharing in it. Like Allah, the name Allah, God, deserving of worship, object of worship, only object of true worship. We don't have any part in that. Anybody who claims that people should be worshiping them is in fact wrong, misguided, evil, in fact. Ibn Arabi was known to have said to people, because he was amongst what they call the people who believed in unity of existence, that you are Allah, I am Allah, everything and everybody is Allah. So you can worship yourself, because if you worship yourself, you're worshiping Allah. This is madness. This is madness. And anybody who shares that belief, Al-Hallaj, we know, he was famous for it, declared openly, I am Allah. That kind of statement, belief, practice is totally unacceptable. It's disbelief from the Islamic perspective. No matter how you cloak it, you paint it, you tweak it, it's just disbelief, because only Allah deserves to be worshipped. So any of the other names that carry this uniqueness, then we worship Allah by affirming its qualities and attributes belonging only to Allah. So as human beings cannot reach the level of divine wisdom where we have that understanding of the way everything should be and go. We worship Allah by reflecting and contemplating on the perfection of creation made by Al-Hakim. We should remind ourselves that Al-Hakim, by seeing his wisdom reflected through his creation, we remind ourselves of him being Al-Hakim and worship him as Al-Hakim by seeing in all around us all that we exist in, the wisdom of his creation. This whole creation was not an accident. Others say it's just an accident, Big Bang, etc., etc. We reject that. This is not an accident. This is the creation of a wise God. It didn't evolve. Yes, some evolution happened, but what we have today is not a product of evolution as claimed. There is special creation. Allah created all the species himself as he wished. And the way the earth is, where he has given a specific percentage of oxygen in the air, a specific percentage of salt in our blood that if we were just to change them slightly, we would die instantly. How's that? So precise. This is not an accident. So we should take a look around us and look into ourselves and realize the beautiful and perfect wisdom of Al-Hakim in creation. As Allah said, it is He who made everything that He has created perfect, in perfect form. And He began the creation of humankind from clay, from that which looks like nothing, clay, mud. Humankind was made from. Human beings who are at the peak of creation today, their origins are lowly, mud. Allah gave that for us to reflect on. In the time when the Quran was revealed, that we are made from clay, they accepted made from clay means Allah took the clay and formed it and made us. Today, we can understand that the elements which make up our bodies are the elements found in clay. It's all found there in the earth. It's just mixed in different proportions. And the proportions that exist on the earth, around us, etc., it's not living being. It doesn't take these forms, etc. It's just mud. But in other proportions, when you increase this and decrease that, and so then you have a human being. Subhanallah. And as a last point of applying this name Al-Hakim, Al-Hakim gave us the wisdom of the Quran, demonstrated by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So we should make that book of Allah, the Quran, our closest companion. We should refer to it all the time. The guidance is there. Allah said, Hudan lil muttaqeen. It is guidance for those who fear Allah. It's not just a book to read its letters and words and sentences. Rote style, repetitive style, beautiful voices, but unclear, not understood. A relic that we preserve. We wrap it in special wrappings. We put it on top of the shelves. We make sure it doesn't touch the ground. No other book can come on top of it. If it falls, we must take it and kiss it, put it on our heads. So we have all of these rites and rituals around the Quran, which didn't come from Prophet Muhammad ﷺ at all. He never told us to do these things. People made it up because it's much easier to do these kind of things, and feel, oh, we're treating the Quran, we're protecting the Quran, we're loving the Quran, than to go find out what the Quran is actually saying. That's work. Now you have to make an effort. You have to go reflect now. You have to hear what it's actually saying and think, how is that relevant to me? And that's effort. So people naturally shy away from work. Once easier, you just have to wrap it, put it, kiss it, all the other things. So this is our lowly natures, our weak natures, that we find it easier to deal with irrelevant things concerning the Quran than to do with the most relevant thing of understanding the Quran. So in these last few days that remain of the last 10 days of Ramadan, while seeking Laylatul Qadr and trying our best to pray the best prayers that we can, whatever we read of the Quran, try to make it what it was intended to be, a source of guidance, hudan lil muttaqin. And may Allah make us amongst those who fear Him. Now, going on to the third principle concerning application of Allah's names. And that is basically that where there is a promise in the name, we should have hope. We should have strong hope in Allah based on that promise. So these divine names, Al-Hakam, Al-Hakim, and Al-Hakeem, contain in their various meanings divine promises which should remove from our hearts and souls any doubts. The doubts which are prefaced by why, when things don't go the way we expect that they should. This is the big one. This is one of the doors through which the satanic forces attack the faithful, especially in times of weakness. Our strongest defense is to seek refuge in Allah from the accursed shaitan or Satan. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. And his followers, and to remember the subtle meanings of these mighty names, which assure us that whatever Allah judges is best. This is the big challenge. Whatever Allah judges is the very best. We should feel confidence and certainty that though we can't see the benefit right here and now, it is there. We only have to trust in Allah, that His judgments are most wise and most appropriate, by having patience and confidence that it will all work out for the best. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Allah is sufficient for whoever trusts Him. The last principle of Ibn Battal was that where there's a warning in the name, we should fear Him. Where there's a warning, the name warns us against certain things or warns us of consequences and things like this, then we should fear them. We should have in our hearts real fear that we would suffer as a result. So these divine names also contain warnings against ignoring Allah's judgments for His creatures. As they contain instructions to accept wholeheartedly, etc., there's also warnings against ignoring what Allah has ruled. We will pay the price for neglecting the Sharia in favor of man-made laws in countries and regions where Muslims are in the majority, or they hold the reins of government in their hands. We're not talking about where Muslims are minorities, that we're gonna, implement Sharia, that's what we're accused of. Although most people don't even know what Sharia is anyway. How many states at one point, a few years back, they declared and made, official pronouncements and, written legal documents that we will not follow Sharia in this state. We are against Sharia. No Sharia. When the people were asked, well, what is Sharia? It's chopping off hands and chopping off heads. And is that what Sharia means? Well, that's what we heard. This is Sharia. That may be an element in the Sharia, but the greater Sharia is not that. And no, in any case, we will not allow the practice of Sharia in our state at all. So then what are you saying to Muslims? Muslims can't pray. Praying 5 times a day is Sharia. Really? Fasting in the month of Ramadan, that's Sharia. You're kidding. Giving in charity, that's Sharia. Oh, sorry. We didn't really mean it. I guess we needed to have found out more before making those decisions. Well, too late. Now it's in the law books that Sharia is forbidden. If somebody decides to apply it at some point in the future, a'udhu billah, for Muslims in America. Anyway, the bottom line is that, as Allah has told us, وَلَا يُشْرِكُ فِي حُكْمِهِ أَحَدًا. Do not give anyone a share in his judgments. Those judgments made by Allah, we should hold them, uphold them, and defend them to whatever degree we are able. Relative to our own countries, modern education is a classic example where we have been overwhelmed by man-made principles, sciences, laws. When Muslim countries and communities accepted willingly or unwillingly Western secularized education as its standard, we made it a standard, there came along with it a rise in atheism and deism amongst the youth. We started to hear more and more children saying, there's no God. We don't believe in God. That's backward. That's this, it's that, and the other. Something which was shocking for many people. It was a rebellion against Islamic norms, which just didn't make sense anymore. That's what was happening to them. They were rejecting what they thought was Islam, when in fact it wasn't Islam. It was the culture, the cultural practices and requirements and pressures, etc., that were being put on young people who were learning. Now they were being brainwashed by these textbooks that they're studying in school. Yes, there was Islamic studies. They had, some Islamiyat, they call them, and whatever that's in the school syllabus in many Muslim countries. But what they were studying, 90% of the time, were books created from the West, translated, whatever, but the root was Western thought, which removed God from the discussion. It became stone cold secular. So children are reading this stuff, which these books that were written, these books have been written over 100 years. They have tweaked and manipulated the words and the concepts, etc., to make sure that that message of secularism reaches the readers. So it's not surprising that we find young people rebelling against the norms of Islam and Islamic society, because they can't distinguish between what is really Sharia and what is culture. So if Islamic standards of quality Islamized education are not maintained, Western standards become the norm. Remember that education is primarily the transfer of a civilization's culture to the next generation. That's the essence of it. The transfer of culture from one generation to the next. Yeah, it's fitted on, around, between packaging facts, knowledge, which is real, but it's coming in a particular package. And that package, which is handed down from generation to generation, for us is like a time bomb, ticking away until it explodes in extremist, violent movements like Boko Haram or Shabab or Abu Sayyaf You know, this is the results. People ignorant, completely ignorant of what Islam teaches, and they think they're defending Islam. You know, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Bottom line is, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Those who don't judge by what Allah reveals are the ones who are truly corrupt. It brings in the society chaos and corruption. That's what opening up the society leads to. And this is the consequence of us not heeding the warnings that Allah has given us in the Quran. We've become distant from it. These words and statements have very little meaning in our life now. But we should fear these consequences, which Allah has warned us of if we don't hold on firmly to the principles of the deen. So education should remain sacred, should be taught from an Islamic perspective. Yes, we learn science, we learn physics, we learn mathematics, everything, but it should be from an Islamic perspective, so that our students who come through the schooling systems will understand that Islam has something to say about it. Islam is relevant. It's not that Arabic and Quran Islamic studies that we used to take once a week. No, that wasn't Islam. It was something of Islam, but it really wasn't Islam. Islam needed to be introduced. It needed to be blended with whatever was being taught, so that our young people coming out of the educational systems will understand that Islam is relevant. It addresses everything. Everything has an Islamic perspective to it, as well as an un-Islamic perspective to it. And we as Muslims need to know what is that Islamic perspective, so that we can utilize the knowledge that we're getting in the schools, etc., in a way which is pleasing to Allah. So it becomes ibadah for us. So as students, we're on the path to paradise, as the Prophet ﷺ had said. Whoever takes a path in which they're seeking knowledge, Allah makes the path to paradise easy for them. So the whole studenthood, the whole student process that they've gone through, that was supposed to be putting them on a path heading directly to Jannah. But can we say that today about our educational systems? Well, this is the result. We have lost wisdom. We think we have knowledge, but that knowledge is corrupted. It's been secularized. It's been demonized by those who don't understand it. The good that is in it is looked at as evil by those who just see the product, those students who come out of the schools. So we need to get back on track. We need to fear Allah in these matters, apply the Sharia across the board, as long as we are able, as much as we can, without engaging in violent, chaotic actions against society. This is not the way. This wasn't the way of the Prophet ﷺ. This should not be our way. Closing our session, calling on Allah using this divine name, we can say, O Allah, Ya Hakeem, we know that you are the only one who possesses ultimate wisdom. Make us of those who are content with your decisions. Adorn us with wisdom in dealing with the others and with spreading your message. Grant us understanding of your book and the Sharia guidelines which reflect this understanding. Ameen. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, before closing, and alhamdulillah, we have done a complete session. Allah spared us the trials of blackouts. Electricity was good. Thank you, Allah. And now, before closing, we'll just take a few questions if there are. Let me go to the end of the session here. Questions. Okay, this is a more social question from Sister Zabiba asking about my family here. How are things in Addis Ababa? Alhamdulillah, things are good. You know, Addis Ababa is a place of very few coronavirus infections. The country has tried its best to set up the distancing and all this, but the cases were so small, so few, that they didn't really crack down and arrest people and all these other kinds of things. But people tried to follow the guidelines. There's people wearing masks, etc. I've stayed in my home and dedicated my time to this program, this series. Inshallah, it will remain a beneficial series for time to come. And hopefully, as I mentioned earlier, we'll try to get that book out, which will be dealing with Allah's names according to the principles which I've outlined here, inshallah. I don't understand, but somebody's asking a question about opening the fast, meaning, I guess, breaking the fast. Is that Maghrib or at night? It's at Maghrib. When the Adhan goes, break your fast. And you should hasten to break your fast. As the Prophet ﷺ said, you know, Allah blesses those who hasten to break their fast, who delay their suhoor and hasten to break their fasts. Another question, Asif Latif is asking about whether, you know, when we want something from Allah, we need something, we're asking Allah for it. Should we just ask Him once, or should we keep on asking and asking and asking? Because, you know, of course, as human beings, when somebody asks too much, saying, you know, this, you know, you're bothering me, you know, you become a pain. You know, one time was enough. I heard you. If I'm going to do anything, I'm going to do it. That's not how Allah is. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is welcoming those who ask Him. The more you ask, you try to do it sincerely, not just repetitively. Give me, O Allah, give me, O Allah, give me, O Allah, give me. No. But to apply it sincerely, then the more chances that we have of the dua or prayer being answered. Nuruddin Abdul, watching from Nigeria, Bauchi State. Ahlan wa sahlan. Barakallahu fikum. One question after praying Taraweeh in a masjid or whatever, or praying Salat al-Witr, can you still pray Tahajjud? Well, the Prophet ﷺ said, let, you know, Witr be the last prayer of the night. That's his recommendation. Better you follow it. San Salma Jovi Floor from Philippines. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome. Anyway, I don't see that many questions. I guess my assistants have been answering the most significant ones. She just said, Noor Furqan, thank you for your kind words. Yusuf Al Hassan asking a question, I guess not really related to the names, about people calling themselves by different names, whether Wahhabiya or Tijaniya or Ahl Sunnah, etc. Well, if the name serves a purpose, no harm. But if the name is representative of some kind of deviation, then it's better to avoid it. And Allah already called us Muslims. I think that's more than enough. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك